Hello everyone, I'm Brian Croydragon and welcome back to Vox Adventures. Today, what shall we be doing today? Guess just a nature walk, which is perfectly fine. Excuse me. Of course, I'm not without a subject to talk about, and today it is Alexander the Great. And that's a pretty big subject. Where do we... Hey, Alex. Not the Alexander I'm talking about, but okay. What? So, where do we start? What? Hey. Come on. Come on up. Come on up, Alex. Up, boy, up. Come on. Jeez, what was that? It's too early in the morning for Markiplier's indie horror bullshit. Well, where do we start? Well, for one thing, Alexander seems to have been born in the wrong millennium, in more than a few ways. He was a progressive man for his time, a promoter of ethnic diversity, for instance. I mean, yeah, he was pretty much, well, yeah, that's just one of the big examples. And the strange thing is that he was a Greek. I don't have anything against the Greeks, but they were uh, famously xenophobic back then. And basically their definition of barbarian was anyone who was not Greek. Yeah. Of course, they occasionally used it to other Greek cities, so, yeah, the ancient Greeks, they were really something. And of course, as a Macedonian, he wouldn't have been recognized as Greek. By the Greeks. Am I gonna, oh, okay. I mean, he was a really progressive man for his time, but, there's also an indication that he would have been better off living in the Bronze Age. By that I mean him modeling himself off of Achilles, the hero of the Iliad, as well as using pharaonic names from the Old Kingdom, which, you know, is when the pyramids were being built. Well, it's shelter. Possibly abandoned shelter. Hmm. There's a lot of other examples of Alexander being progressive. Just let me find them. Okay, he was enthusiastic about scientific discovery and technological development. He favored emotional expression in artwork, took a positive view of ethnic diversity, which I've already mentioned, and treated handicapped people with considerably more respect than people before him had. He also generalized Necarian court system uh, rules for his entire empire, and that gave women in all of the Middle East the right to sue in court through a male proxy and legally own any profits from investing their dowry. This resulted in the creation of the first professional lawyers, since the women needed a male proxy in court. Another result was a small group of independently wealthy women becoming politically and socially influential, and they would play a big role in the rise of Christianity. And women becoming patrons of the arts in their own right, meaning we started to see women's preferences reflected in artwork, and also cosmetology started to get taken seriously. A good thing for the chemistry field. Okay, what's this? Oh yeah, he modeled himself after Achilles because he strongly identified with the heroes of the Iliad. I don't know, Alexander's a strange case. Some instances point out would have he would have been better off in the Bronze Age, and what? Come on up, Alex. Come on up. Up. Up, boy, up. Yeah. There's a few cases that Alexander would have been better off living in the Bronze Age, and there's some that he would have been better off living in a later age than he did. What? Well, I should say Alexander did model himself after Achilles, and like Achilles, he died young. He had two Roman counterparts, Germanicus, who had been Augustus's choice to succeed him, but deemed him too young, and thus Tiberius succeeded Augustus, and when Germanicus was, and Germanicus would have succeeded Tiberius if Germanicus had not predeceased Tiberius. Ironically, Constantine the Great, his other Roman counterpart, didn't die young, but died an old man. His 60s, I believe. Excuse me one moment. I'm feeling a tad bit dehydrated. Okay. Well, I went on about Alexander uh, having been born in the wrong millennium, so where do I go from here? Well, Kid focused on portraying where he's the son of Nectanebo II, last native Egyptian ruler of, well, Egypt. Wait, what did I just say? He's portrayed as the son of Nectanebo II sometimes, or at least in one I'm aware of. Even though, if I remember correctly, the Persians had conquered Egypt, and thus deposed Nectanebo, by the time Alexander was in his childhood, so that doesn't hold up, because the story usually goes that Nectanebo fled Egypt after conquest, took refuge in the court of Philip, and made a phony prophecy just so he could bed Olympias. Of course, all prophecies are phony, but his was a special case, and just because, well, he had the hots for the queen, or, well, one of them anyway. Philip's wife of the hour, because the Greeks at that time had a multitude of wives. Well, the monarchs did anyway. And considering the son prior to Alexander was handicapped both physically and mentally, he wasn't exactly an ideal successor in contrast to Alexander. So despite a certain level of animosity between Philip and Olympias, it's probably a good reason why Olympias enjoyed as much power as she did. Granted, the man we know as Philip III was also illegitimate, so where the hell am I? Yeah, that's where I am. High above the world. There's a certain irony of Alexander modeling himself after Achilles when he shares a name with Achilles, was the killer of Achilles. And that Alexander is an alternate name of Paris. Despite having had 3 wives, as well as a harem larger than his father's, Alexander only had the 1 son, who of course was born posthumously. There is an illegitimate son known as Heracles of Macedon, but his existence is doubtful. As even if he was illegitimate, he would have had a better right to the throne than Alexander's illegitimate half-dweller. So he probably didn't exist, probably just someone who was made up. Jeez, how far are we going? Well, that's the edge of the world reached. If you're curious about that Nectar Nebo thing, it's an expansion on Son of Zeus myth. According to the story, well, it's really just a romance thing, which isn't known for historical accuracy, because I've already gone on the subject of Nectar Nebo role ending when Alexander was already a child, so. But the thing is that in the story, Nectar Nebo prophesizes that Amun-Ra, whom the Greeks equivalate with Zeus, will visit Olympias that very night. And so, in the form of a dragon, Nectar Nebo comes to Olympias and blah blah blah. Philip is made a cuckold and Alexander is conceived. The funny thing is that the invasion of the Persian Empire, the conquest of it, had all been Philip's idea, and if he had not been assassinated, well then, I suppose he would have conquered Persia and stopped at Persia, because that's what historians think. That he actually would have just stopped at Persia, in contrast to Alexander, who just wanted to conquer as much as he could. Doubtful he would have been as progressive as Alexander, or as filled with Bronze Age nostalgia, an age which neither Alexander nor Philip had ever known, so how they can have nostalgia for that, I have no idea. And let's take a look at the modern analysis of Philip II's assassination. Many modern historians have observed that all the accounts are improbable. In the case of Pausanias, the stated motive of the crime hardly seemed adequate. On the other hand, the implication of Alexander and Olympias seems specious. To act as they did would have required brazen effrontery in the face of a military personally loyal to Philip. Specious. Where's my dictionary? Don't think I've ever actually encountered that word before. Oh, here it is. Specious. Apparently, but not actually. Sound. Deceptive. Uh-huh. What seems to be recorded are the natural suspicions that fell on the chief beneficiaries of the assassination. However, their actions in response to the murder cannot prove their guilt in the crime itself, regardless of how sympathetic they might have seemed afterward. Whatever the actual background from the assassination, it may have had an enormous effect on later world history, far beyond what any blah blah blah. Yeah, we know that. As asserted by some modern historians, had the older and more settled Philip had been the one in charge of the war against Persia, he may have rested content with relatively moderate conquests, e.g., making Anatolia into a Macedonian province and not pushed further into an overall conquest of Persia and further campaigns in India. Well, now that's interesting. What time is it? Yes, now that is interesting. Imagine the Persian Empire if it had continued like that. The Achaemenid Empire, I believe it's called. Well, I know it's called that. It's the pronunciation I'm not exactly sure about. That's your Kushan Empire. Where exactly is that? Or was that? Hmm. Let's see here. Zanbei State. Xiongnu. No. Teotihuacan. No. Post-classical. Kingdom of Aksum. Maybe. Yeah, I don't know. What the hell was that? Okay, hold on. That romance I mentioned, that portrays Nectanebo as the father of Alexander, that's not the only case of someone's relation being changed. Now, Roxana, Alexander's wife, who gave birth to his only son, was not, well, let me just put it this way. The romance portrays her as a daughter of Darius III, combining her with Stateria II. And obviously you can see where I'm going with this. Of course, it was pretty much, that romance was pretty much written at a time when the concept of plural wives was no longer acceptable in Europe. Hmm. Welcome to Husk Country. We'll be lucky if we don't run into one. Welcome to Digital Land. Population, a chicken. Why am I so fixated on this scar on the back of my left Achilles tendon? Hmm. Oh, jeez, I got. Oh yeah, that's definitely a husk. Yeah. Oh jeez. That would be mine. I actually told some friends about Creeper mating season, and they said it sounded horrifying. Horrifying, terrifying. It was one of those. For goodness sake. Why am I so fixated on that scar? I'm not even sure if scar is a proper term. Scrape, maybe? Yeah, shelter. exactly qualify. It says post-classical. Runs from 500 to 1450. Okay. Hmm. Let's see here. Hmm. Hmm. King of Iberia. Huh. I don't. Hmm. be too much to ask for a list of the Iberian monarchs. Okay, let's go. Okay, still in Husk. Oh, jeez. Oh, wait. Is that an Enderman or just a tree? Yeah. That was a skeleton, nothing to be scared of. And we're back in digital land. Digital land. Yeah, just an Enderman. Well, that's all for today, everyone. I'm Brian Croy Dragon signing out. Stay straight.